Fuck. Yeah, fuck. Okay. Now,
so right here, this is the right distance?
Yeah, I think this should work. Yeah.
All right.
So, hi there.
What's up, man?
Yeah, nothing much. Been really tired. Tired of pussy, especially.
You've been having some mad incel energy. Like, what's up? What's going on?
I think my problem is that I've become really good at playing the dating game, and it's become really fake and performed for me, and I don't really know how to fall in some kind of sincere way anymore for a person.
Yeah, but I get the feeling you have some frustration going on too, right? Some sexual frustration. That's why I said the incel vibes, because with an incel, they don't even get to the point where they would have any data at all or any interaction. The incel to the listeners is a involuntary celibate, right? So somebody who doesn't get any kind of romantic interaction with women. Usually it's men, right? They're completely deprived of any romantic interaction, and that makes them bitter, and usually, makes them theorize or make up all kinds of stuff about why they're not getting pussy. But in your case, you're obviously not an incel, but you're giving me a vibe, the incel vibe.
No, I actually think you're misunderstanding me. I think I'm some sort of almost direct reverse of the incel right now, because I've been having a lot of dates and I have been getting sex, but those encounters weren't satisfying me, actually. And especially because of like the surplus I had, the luxury of being with multiple women, I think I got disinterested. I think that's what happened. So no, I am not an incel right now, but I do think that coming to the subject of sexual transfiguration, I need me some. Because
you need some.
Because what's going on is that even though I have regular sex, I keep wanting to have more. I get like over horny because the sex that I'm getting is not gratifying. So I want different sex, and it makes me even more primed on getting some. And at the same time, I'm spoiled when I get some.
Yeah, and I think you're also getting desublimated, right? Because with sexual transmutation or sexual transfiguration or sublimation, as they call it in psychoanalysis, you're trying to take an energy or a repression and elevate it to something more productive. Uh-huh. But in this case, you're getting so much of it, it's desublimating. It's getting worse. The experience is getting more and more shallow, more and more empty, and you're getting more and more frustrated and butthurt, right?
I think you should elaborate on how desublimation exactly works.
Yeah, I'm just spitballing because, Herbert Marcuse in One Dimensional Man talks about repressive desublimation. Uh-huh. And that's that when you are exposed to pleasurable stimuli too often, too many times, it actually desublimates you. It makes them mundane, banal, makes them pointless. And that in itself, it's a kind of repression because it doesn't allow you to actually get the meaningful, let's say, the meaningful, beautiful, fulfilling pussy. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is funny because this explicitizes an idea I've been having for a few weeks now, which maybe is that I should be a bit more celibate. Is that I should just abandon that whole domain right now until I get so frustrated that I want to be getting some again, or that I want to be sublimating some again into something else. But I'm not sure yet. I do notice that if I don't have some kind of sexual life satisfied, I feel like I'm less of me, because I used to always have a really gratifying sex life, and it really fulfilled a part of me that just felt like something I could connect to my identity, something that I was. And now that it's not there, even though I am kind of sublimating into other aspects of my life, I still feel partially unfulfilled. It almost feels essential to me. It comes to that point where I'm at my most ecstatic, where I have all the things plus a good sex life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a bit. I'm thinking, isn't it in part because of your specifically male psychology, like the straight male need for pussy, sociologically speaking? Uh-huh. That because you say, you need to have some of a sex life as a part of your, daily fulfillment. And I think that the male ego requires pussy to sustain itself.
Yeah.
Should I elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Right. So the reason, like with pussy, as a sociological definition, I mean, so you got a biological need, right? But that's the same for men and women. You want a sexual gratification. But pussy is a scarce resource for men, right? It's hard to get. Most men, that's why we were joking about the incels. A lot of men can't get any of it, not even a hint, not even a whiff, right? And there's research on this. Like if you look at historical anthropology, there are theories that even in hunter-gatherer societies, maybe about half to 60% of men never got to actually procreate. Doesn't mean they never had sex, but it does imply that they were scarce. It was scarce. Women, they're very selective. Mm-hmm. They gatekeep pussy. That's just the way it works, right? So because it's a scarce resource and because you need it, I think culturally we have attached it to the male ego. You fulfill your manhood by getting pussy. You're not exactly a man. You're not, you're incomplete if you can't manage to get a girl.
Yeah, the validation of your identity is based on whether you can get it or not.
Yeah, exactly. Your male identity. But the reverse, because dick is absolutely not a scarce resource for women. There's no ego satisfaction, gratification for women, right? It's too easy to get. So they still, of course, biologically want sex, but they might not want a deeper, almost spiritual, identitarian reason for getting sex. They might just want it for in a relationship.
Yeah, I almost feel now that the binary of player and slut is constituted on this basis.
Definitely, yeah.
So the male ego is flattered when it gets pussy, so he's a player. And the female ego is degraded when it gets a lot of dick, so she becomes a slut. Which are very dangerous territories, of course, because we're going into like evolutionary sociology, psychology right now.
Why is that dangerous?
Well, because it makes it so determined, and it goes counter to the left identity politics right now, which would claim that most of it, like 90%, is all culturally or society-based in how it is given shape.
Yeah, I mean, I could run with that. I could fly with that, but the problem is, how do you explain this completely stable and permanent sociological asymmetry between men getting pussy and women getting dick? I mean, you could argue it's cultural conditioning. Women are repressed and they don't go after it, but that doesn't explain why they would be so picky, because here in the Netherlands, it's a bit more liberal. A lot of women want to get dick, and they go on Tinder en masse. But if you just look at the statistics, they will swipe 80% of men left, right? Way more picky than men. Men just go, ooh, because we think any pussy is pussy, right? But women don't think that way. And I think you can't explain it completely culturally, especially in this culture, because...
Now, would they do it on the basis of sedimentation? So these power structures have been around for so long already that they really grind into our psychologies and make us work like that. But still, even all the way back, there were already maybe patriarchal power structures about. So they made it so that even now, after so many thousand years, it still works like this. And like they would maybe try to find examples within societies where it doesn't work like that, where you
they always do
see
that.
Different dynamics in order to say, look, hey, over there, it doesn't work like that, so it's not necessary. It's not a biological necessity. It's more of which kind of actually comes down to our opinion as well. I think it's more of a biological correlative. So in general, it works like this.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, these evolutionary principles, they're tendencies, right? There's no completely discrete male attitude or female attitude. They're just tendencies. You'll find very picky men. You'll find women who are like men. They just want to fuck around nonstop. But the general sociological tendency is that, getting pussy is super hard. And getting dick is very easy. Like, it doesn't really matter what it's based on, biologically or cultural. I'm inclined it's probably like, I don't know, 80% biological, 20% cultural.
Well, it does matter, of course. It matters politically.
But in current society, there is an epidemic, a growing epidemic of incels. Like we read a CIA article, they're fucking becoming terrorists and shit. They're committing murder because of the lack of pussy. And I think we should play with the idea of this sexual transfiguration as a way to combat this, right? Personally or societally.
I agree.
To grab these frustrations and sublimate them, right?
Okay, before going into that, I want to talk about maybe the causes of the incels and why is it a phenomenon so specific to our times. I think that is something you know more about. And then maybe after that we could go into the solution, okay? Like, hey, incels, why don't you try some freaking sublimation? That could really work for you.
Yeah. Good one. So I think this is just my spiel, it's just speculative. Nobody will properly understand what's going on until decades later and way more research. But I think what happened is before, like 30, 40 years ago, basically any culture, any society was one with enforced monogamy. So whatever preferences the men and women had, there was great pressure, even more so on the female side, but on both sides, to marry at some point. You had to get married, else you were, incomplete. You had to have kids. That was just part of their subjectivity. That was the way they would, fulfill their initiation right into maturity. So even if the woman didn't think the man was, up to par with her tastes, she still had to get married. So in that kind of society, it would be hard to get incels because they would get something. They would get one and they would get married, but it would fulfill their male insecurities. But after the 60s and 70s, the whole sexual revolution, gradually giving people, especially women, I think, the freedom, and I'm just a descriptive, right? I'm not saying it's a bad thing. The freedom to just go based on their preferences. Then I think we actually let the biology do its thing. Before it was more culturally determined because you had this whole institutional structure of enforced monogamy, putting so much pressure to get married.
Yeah.
Now it was like...
You could still, if I may interrupt, you could still say that was also biologically determined.
What?
I guess. Like
the enforced monogamy?
This institution even took place. But that's a really fundamental discussion.
Yeah.
I just like to bring it up because it shows how important the sort of biology versus culture discussion actually is, because it makes you think about, okay, how probable is it for us to do something with it, and what are the implications for that on a political level? But it's still a really difficult discussion that we shouldn't go into too much. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so we can get into that later, though. By that reasoning, I don't see how you can make everything biologically determined or everything culturally determined. So I think it's more nuanced, as you say.
Is it based on like Cartesian dualism?
What?
Or not?
Oh, damn, we're getting into Cartesian stuff now?
Like even the possibility of this binary. Culture is not physically determined.
I think so. I think New Left, and in general, most current contemporary theories of subjectivity still consider humans to be non-natural, non-biological. They have some sort of split, because one of the reasons why it's completely culture framework, and I'm not saying a lot of actual academics have it, but you get this idea from following New Left politics. Why this framework doesn't seem to work that well is they seem to be denying humanity's place in nature, in the material world, because are they going to say, are dogs culture all the way down? Probably not, right? Dogs are animals. They're beings. They have biologies. But we're also animals and beings and have biologies. And I think we get closer to how it actually works by acknowledging it. And like I was saying with those, evolutionary psychology things, to discuss those as well. I think that is how we help incels or society in general.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Not this complete culture.
The standpoint of just placing human beings outside of nature is in some way very arrogant.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that makes it so counterproductive also, I think.
Yeah, but I do think, like you say, you could make a case that it goes back to the Cartesian subject, where you're radically a thinking thing. That's what you primarily are, and that thinking thing is completely dissociated from the external world. That's all you need, right? At that point, anything... in a way, Descartes, unintentionally, but Descartes gave the groundwork for creating anything out of yourself, thinking that it's completely separated from the external world. Whereas I think, in fact, that's not the case. And as you say, I do think it's arrogant. Oh yeah, so the 60s and 70s, I think, letting women choose what kind of dick they want, just let loose this preference, and then you get this scenario, and it's similar with many other animals, like with birds. The men they compete. They have to prove to get the pussy, right? So if you're like most incels, you're not well socialized, maybe you stank a bit, you don't have a good body going on, but especially you're ill socialized. We can talk about that more. No way in hell you're getting it, and every man gets this, right? Even average to above average men, they might get pussy, but they do realize it's not easy, and that's why you get the whole player thing. So I think the player thing is a cultural result, cultural lingo based on these sociological formations.
Yeah. So anyway, what are the kinds of the kinds of bad consequences that stem from this incel attitude?
Yeah, I think what's not being discussed enough is that it also applies to women, but in a different way. I'm really ill-informed on the female side, so I won't talk about that. But on the incel side, I think a lot of men, since they require romantic interactions, since they have this need, when it's not fulfilled, they feel deeply rejected, right? Because the initiation right is being denied to them. Whereas before, enforced monogamy ensured it for everyone. Now it's in the free market, right? It's we use market metaphors for everything. Mm-hmm. Now it's the free market of dating, free market of sexuality. It's competition, and in a market, competence supposedly is selected for. So the less competent men don't get anything. And there is not only is there no compensation for them, but the current new conceptualizations of what it means to be man, woman, or the whole binary, non-binary thing is trying to deconstruct their masculinity. So at first they're being denied their masculinity, and then it's getting deconstructed. So I think it's like a double whammy where they feel extra butthurt because they didn't even get it in the first place for it to get deconstructed. They're not even getting it. And they're also saying, no, but it's also just wrong. And they get nothing. I think it's a more general issue as well. The modern movements, they just seem to want to deconstruct masculinity, but not replace it with anything else. I'm cool with deconstructing masculinity, but I think you do have to give a whole framework to replace it. Else you just get really frustrated young men who are not fulfilling their one part biological need, but basically a social need to be a competent, mature male, a player who, not a player, but somebody who can get some pussy. And of course some intimacy, right? Of course. It's
not as simple as the pure sexual act.
No.
It's very much erotic in that sense, is that it is above the simple sexual reproductive layer, and very much also about all that is added to it in the sense of identity, a feeling of fulfillment, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
So just to indeed make it more explicit, we're not talking about the pure act of sexual reproduction. We're talking about the fact that this is so much invested with whether you feel you are worthy or not.
Yeah, and I think maybe more for men than women. I think it's usually framed in reverse, but maybe it's more for men than women in some way, that they have less avenues for establishing intimacy with other people. And
I want to interrupt you on that, because I think a big problem that women experience is that they feel that men are primarily there to get into their pants. So they can be way more suspect of social interactions with men because they feel like, hey, you're not here to actually get to know me, you're here to get into my pants. And I think that's a big problem for them in relation to trying to establish intimacy, because they have to be way more suspect of the interaction than us.
Yeah, I agree. Though I think it's a bit inevitable, right? Because why else would a stranger approach you if not for a superficial reason?
Yeah, of course that is the case, but it's.
I think women.
Of course that's the case, but I do feel like I want to say that for men the primary goal is more often sex.
No, yeah, I think that's what they experience, but in fact they do want more than it.
Like more than what?
So they will, on the surface level, and maybe even to their own consciousness, they will say, I just want pussy, I want to fuck, and they fulfill their masculinity. But I do think, because one of the reasons why they become terrorists and shit, or they commit suicide, the pathology is really strong. So I think it needs stronger, deeper underlying motivations. And I think in part it's because, most guys, they can't talk about feelings or anything of the sort with other guys, but they could do it theoretically with their romantic interest. And a lot of media also markets this, right? That within your romantic interest, maybe there you can show some sensitivities, especially as a man. So maybe they're not aware of it, but I think on some level, and you can also see it in the incel lingo, they want the woman to fulfill these gaps in them.
Of course, but I think...
Which is wrong-headed because they're expecting too much, but I do think in part it's what's subconsciously motivating them to go ahead.
I think we're still talking past each other because I am not talking about the incel specifically. I'm talking about the fact that in general, when women are approached by men, this is often because they want to get into their pants. And that
totally.
makes you way more suspect. So I don't know if you would disagree empirically.
No, totally agree.
Okay, and I think that is what constitutes a problem for women to try to find intimacy with another man, because they can never take the interaction prima facie. I think that's a big problem. Another thing I want to get to, sorry, I'm just going off right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is we were talking about what is the problem of male identity in relation to sexuality and relationships with women? It's getting pussy. What is the problem for females? It's are they pretty or not? I think a lot of women have to, because of societal demands, over-obsess about how they look constantly and experience that their body is a constant site of objectification, of whether is this good enough. And I'm wondering about whether less attractive females might often find themselves to have incel-like tendencies maybe, because they are just simply so disregarded as a possibility for some kind of sexual relationship, just put out of the whole sex game because they are not attractive enough. While males, of course, can, if they try hard enough, via being players or via learning the game, compensate for their lack of attractiveness.
Yeah, I think it could be possible that, let's say you're really like bottom 2% butt ugly girl, that you basically become an incel because then the dick becomes a scarce resource.
Exactly.
And then maybe you would show the same kinds of behaviors. I do think there is such a thing as female incels, though they are way more rare. Though it's still a bit mind-numbing, because I just can't imagine, as a woman, even if you're butt ugly, if you just have no standards and be like, any dick right now would be cool, you should get it sooner or later, something. You might not get high-quality dick, but you'll get some dick. Whereas the reason why the incel phenomenon is so interesting is they just can't get it. They'll go on dating sites. Like, I know this guy. I have friends who, they're like, yeah, man, I go on a dating site, I have pictures. They have crappy pictures, of course. And they say, I haven't matched in 6 months. Can you find me one woman who has that? Like, I didn't even match for 6 months. It's theoretically possible, but it must be very rare, at least.
Yeah, and what I think a large difference might be is that as an incel, because you in years never get any sex of any kind, the frustration really builds. While maybe if you're not an attractive woman and you get it sometimes, you have this lingering frustration coming in and out, constantly being partially satisfied, that makes you so that you don't get into the really extreme points of view. That you might be able to calm yourself down in your beliefs, in how you constitute your identity, because it's not all that bad. Even though I might feel like this is some kind of epitome of mediocrity, feeling like this constantly, like, yeah, I don't never get anything, but I sometimes get something, and that's okay, but it's never really satisfying. But as an incel, it's just so easy for you to have your frustrations built up because shit never happens.
Yeah, and you mean the mediocrity applies to most women, or
yeah, to the female experience that I'm projecting right now of being very unattractive and therefore only having sex sometimes because some kind of dude thought, yeah, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see this in a lot of series as well, right? So the women just get meaningless. They get sex, but they get meaningless pump and dump situations. That's a good one, pump and dump. Yeah, they get the pump and dump, and usually it's depicted as the man, he's satisfied, he got what he wanted because he got the ego boost, right? It's a resource. I'm not saying it's enough for men to become happy, but it's a resource. They won. They feel like psychologically they won. I pumped and dumped. And the woman is like, what the fuck happened? Maybe they just end up in it because of desire or a hope for some intimacy. In that sense, I think the issue is more egalitarian. Both the incels and let's say, because the incels are a pretty large group, and the women suffering from mediocre love lives, they both want the intimacy, right? Because that's just a human need to get the intimacy,
and the validation.
And the validation, but I think we're raised so that you're just supposed to get it. Like if you manage to get the woman in bed, then you get all the validation you want. And maybe the women have the same thing. Like if I just find a guy, then something is supposed to happen. The validation, instead of thinking, no, it's also an activity. You have to find the right person. You have to work at it yourself. You have to create a bond together to nurture the ability to validate each other.
More needed.
Yeah, it
requires more of a long term as well.
Yeah, but also an active mindset, right? Like with a lot of these incels, they just think, okay, maybe if I look good enough, or my genes, like they're obsessed with
biological determinism.
Yeah, we can go into their theories of why they don't get pussy later in a bit, but
the jaw is so important.
The jawline, the Chad jawline.
It's so important.
Yeah, but I think because everybody kind of conceptualizes intimacy and love as something that's supposed to happen to you, and not as something that you can actively also nurture in yourself, develop. They're missing out on the ability to have those interactions, because how many times have you had that, you talk with someone and they just seem so repressed, they just can't share their feelings. So how are you, even if you are, like the nice Spanish lover guy, what every woman wants supposedly, if the woman is not able to express her feelings by herself, or vice versa, the man isn't, how are you supposed to establish the intimacy in the first place, right?
Yeah, and this is a nice one, because we talked about this before. There is now this phenomenon of children being so raised by social media that they're actually way much more unable to produce friendships and intimacies with others, so that we're creating more of a generation of incels. So I think you told me this. Could you tell us more about this? Or wasn't it you?
Could be. Yeah, I think, this is preliminary. We don't really know exactly the effects of social media yet. It's so recent, but so far it doesn't seem to bode well. There are some studies pointing out that basically large-scale social media consumption fosters bad socialization, especially in boys, also in girls, but especially in boys. Boys have always been more prone to not socialize properly. Both with other boys and with women. It's very important to do that at a young age, so they just get used to, them being able to see girls and women as human beings. That doesn't just come by itself. You have to actually let the boy develop with them, interact with them. And social media, of course, is a proxy for social interactions. You do them vicariously via the medium, right? You just watch videos of people. You watch animes of cool people, but these don't replace the actual social interactions. Social media in particular creates such idealized conceptions of what girls are, also what men are, but maybe I think especially these days, what girls are, that even before having properly socialized, they already have a wrong picture. And of course, when they then actually socialize, they're like, oh, but this is they're not nearly as pretty as I thought. They're not as submissive as I thought, not cooperative as I thought. And that's obviously the case because the media is just made to fulfill, reptilian level base needs, not actually interact with a real human being.
I find it funny that it seems like an intensification of objectification. Because
definitely.
In the case of social interaction face to face, there's always this other talking to you or presenting the possibility of talking to you. While in the voyeurism of social media, you are always the one objectifying because you are looking.
Yeah.
And that intensifies the amount of objectification that you might apply to women in particular, but also to men, of course. And I think it's a general thing, Of course, we can focus on the fact that social media may be bad. This is still a hypothesis, but still for the production of romance, intimacy, healthy sexual relationships. But in general, I think children are becoming less social because they are simply not as busy with being social constantly because they're so much on social media. And I actually see it, I don't know, should we put this in the podcast? I could edit it out. But I actually see it with my little sister. She is so much on her phone and she talks so much about how she has trouble with trying to find friends. And I look at it, and the first thing I want to say is get off your phone, which sounds like I'm a really fucking old dude. I'm just 26, but I have tendencies towards the boomer mindset, which is get off your phone, kids. You gotta be social with people.
Yeah. No. I you're spot on. I think same with the incels. Many studies seem to point out that so women are just picky. It's going to be hard, but in particular, why they even because there are men who that's also a good distinction to make. There are men who don't have sex or romantic interaction, but they're not incels. They might be celibate, voluntary or not, but they're not bitter. They don't lash out at women. They don't create whole theories of beta males and alpha males and gamma males, and these days they have sigma males. The longer the pathology goes on, the more types of males they make excuses to basically have a deterministic view on why they're not getting pussy. But the studies do show that the ones who become incels, they were often already very poorly socialized, so they don't have many friends anyway. Also don't have a good male friends. And that, of course, also makes them way less attractive to people in general. If you're not well socialized, if you can't interact, again, express yourself properly, you can't also have the more basic intimacy that you have with friends. So I agree with you that your sister is, I guess, a good example that it happens at a young age. And probably there's something equivalent happening on the female side, but I know less about it, how that works. But yeah, they would also become less social because they frequent social media so much. But I think general media consumption is slightly higher with men, like especially games and series and anime and stuff. That's why maybe they're the front runners of being desocialized, but women are probably following suit. You could say, to make it more dramatic, there's like an incelification of society or a betification of society, to use their own terms, because of social media, not because of jawlines. No, exactly. That's their excuse. That's their ideology, if you will.
Trying to get away from the actual responsibility of developing some kind of social skill. What I find interesting about this discussion is that it pretty much reminds me of who I used to be when in high school. For me, social interaction was actually a constant site of animosity because I could not assume when I was walking through school that I would be validated or accepted. I was very much, I should just say bullied on what I looked like, on how I behaved, etc. And this produced, on top of that in me, some kind of incel attitude. Like I was always afraid to talk to women, and the first thing I thought was, they're gonna think I'm gay, and that made them, that in some sense dehumanized them, and made it so that I was always afraid to be with them, etc. And this also produced very extreme opinions in me, like all women hate me, and they're kind of grouping together in some kind of conspiratorial way to never accept me ever again, and it's because I'm small and because of the clothes I wear and because of my face or whatever that they will never even consider me as a potential partner. And it really took me becoming more social and having healthy relationships with women that took out all of the animosity and game of the whole social interaction to become really okay with it, and also do away with all these extreme bullshit opinions. Like you sometimes, like when you're in Tinder or something, it's really easy to fall back into those opinions, right? Have you experienced this too? Because I've had really back and forth experiences with dating apps where sometimes, because of the algorithm, not at all because of what I look like or what I did with my profile, I get more matches. And sometimes I get none. And then when I get none, and I'm also ghosted 2 or 3 times, I get salty again. And when I get salty, I become frustrated, and I become angry with the women that ghosted me. And then when I have a surplus, so coming back to scarcity or not, I am completely fine with being ghosted. I don't give a shit, and I just go on, and I don't even produce not a single bad opinion about any woman ever pops into my mind. It's funny.
Man, that's interesting. That's a great example. That your personal relative scarcity determines in a way, of conditions in a way, your attitudes towards women. So
it
when scarcity is there, you incelify,
experience.
and then when you're back into a perceived surplus, you go back to being, egalitarian pro-feminist. Blah blah.
Normal,
just normal. Yeah.
Also, because in the surplus case, your identity is not at risk. I think that's the problem. Like when things are scarce, this one interaction or this one match you might have with someone determines whether you might be validated or not. But in the case that you have a surplus, there are so many people who may give you the opportunity to be validated that losing of you is quite okay. And now I feel like we're getting into neoliberal conceptions of human beings. Should we really go there, Shahrooz?
Should we go there? Why?
It's dangerous.
You're losing me. Why? That's the boogeyman word these days, right? Neoliberalism, neoliberal this, neoliberal that. So we gotta. We're responsible wannabe philosophers here, so we wanna watch out with our terminology.
Yeah. Okay. No. Here's the thing I'm trying to get at. I'm thinking of Foucault and the Homo economicus, which is the idea that neoliberalism conceives of people in this utilitarian way where every act the human being commits is always an investment and is always a risk analysis of whether the investment might come about or not. So it's this idea that like even when you get married, it's actually a risk analysis of, okay, if I marry this man or woman, will they give me gratification and will they stay with me for long enough, or should I or not do it?
Yeah.
Homo economicus. And of course, like people don't want to think about human beings in that way, but it's kind of what we're getting towards now, also by using these economical terms of scarcity.
Yeah, I mean, I think the metaphors we use definitely influence why we think in those ways. It might be that underlying our cultural proclivities, we are actually like this. There are probably some evolutionary psychologists who think that. But at the very least, thinking in terms of these metaphors and structuring our social interactions according to these metaphors, because Tinder also kind of has this market structure going on, right? Mm-hmm. You get like a selection and then you choose which ones you think are good enough based on the minimum amount of info. It's like buying a product. So I would say at the very least, it does reinforce these kinds of behaviors.
Yeah. Oh, and getting back to... I'm sorry, this subject just gets me going. So
yeah, go ahead, man. I can feel the passion.
But getting back to the scarcity or maybe surplus binary, what is so interesting about the whole structure of Tinder is that it constantly feeds you with surplus. Because after every swipe, whether you go left or right, there will be some other one. And it makes it so that you often do not invest in a single person because you always know that there's the possibility of a new person. And this makes it so that people stay on the app a lot, especially women, because they get like 1,000+ likes and 20 matches a day if they really want it. So every person they get, they don't really have to consider and invest into because there's always this next person coming. And I think that makes it so sometimes Tinder can be really counterproductive for them. Mm-hmm. Because they become so used to always having another option that they might never actually consider someone who may be good. But
exactly.
I'm not sure about that. Because I think I've even done the same things. Like I've really noticed and played the algorithm of Bumble and found that when I sometimes show activity during a period and then sometimes not, Bumble wants me to come back. So they just give me a lot of matches. And then when I get a lot of matches again, I'm like, I don't care. I have so much going on. I don't need it anymore. And then I go away again. And that's how they kind of keep me on the app.
Yeah, they play with those mechanisms, right, to keep you hooked. Maybe I'm thinking, getting back to what we discussed in the beginning, that Tinder, Bumble, these dating apps, these swipe-based dating apps, are also a kind of repressive desublimation mechanism, right? Because they're overstimulating your libido. You're seeing way too many profiles of attractive-looking people. It's making you desensitive. That's not unsensitive.
It desensitizes you.
Yeah, it desensitizes you. Thanks for the stimuli of looking at attractive people, and that just makes you go. It makes you a bit of a moron, right? Like you just become lethargic and like whatever. The novelty and salience of having this, of seeing, a person smiling towards you is completely or temporarily revoked by going on Tinder. And I think both men and women have it. But the interesting thing is, I think with men, it incelifies them because, like you say, you don't get the matches, and then you get really butthurt because you have this underlying expectation that you were supposed to get something. I think a lot of men are raised in this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is interesting, right? Because you even have these extreme incels who claim that they should be provided with women.
Yeah, as if it's a social need. Yeah,
it's absurd.
But on the other side, you have the women. I think they're, some of them at least, because a lot of them, they just use it. A lot of them use it, try to use it in the right way. But many, either consciously or unconsciously, I think internalize the objectification that Tinder causes. Since the male gaze is uber present on Tinder, they're mostly men on it. They're gonna thirst on you. They've jerked off on your pic. Let's be honest. They've done all sorts of nasty shit on your pic. You know, they're looking for feet pics of you. They hope there's like somewhere in the corner of your picture, there's a foot, one of your feet is visible. They've done all kinds of shit. And on some level, I know a lot of women don't notice, but on some level they know, and they like the fact the female ego is fed by seeing that they have hundreds of matches, which they do not plan on responding to, or maybe only respond to just get some attention, but they will definitely not give them pussy or get laid or have any interest in dating them. But they probably internalize that. So when we're on the male side, they incelify. The women's side, they probably, not on purpose, of course. I think it's just a mechanism causing this. They, one, bolster the incelification, and the second hand, they strengthen their objectification by internalizing it.
Yeah,
right?
I think so too, definitely.
Same with the women who obsessively take pictures of themselves nonstop and put it on Instagram. They're like self-objectifying. And I think Tinder works in hand. And they must know, like the popular women who make these semi-sexy pics of themselves, pretending they're ignorant of it, they must know that gallons of semen have been spent on their fucking pics, right? I mean, let's be honest. So I'm not like shaming them. Like, if you want to do, go ahead. But don't pretend like you're not encouraging that. Just admit it. Most of them, that I think is the insidious part. That's what makes me depressed when I see that. It's a billion times more gross than porn. When you watch porn, it's explicitly porn. It is vulgar. There's no pretension. But when you see them, they're like walking around, like, you know, those TikTok videos. They're like walking around and shit, and you know, they have big cleavage, but they're pretending like they're not showing big cleavage. They're pretending like they're not being sexual. Like, oh, I'm gonna sing it, but the sexual is getting their views, and that's like fucking creepy, man. That's like some self Kool-Aid that they drank to make their own sense of being objectified, to shroud that in that Kool-Aid. That to me is scary, because the porn stars don't do that. They're like, yeah, fuck me in the ass, which is, yeah, what is happening? That's okay.
The interesting part, right? Because I think a lot of males find the non-explicit stuff on social media more interesting than the porn.
Oh yeah.
Especially because the whole structure of desire is based on this idea that you're not really getting what you want. There is always more, and you're not getting the whole thing, and there's some kind of thing shrouded. While in the case of porn, it is completely open. What you see is what you get. Everything is there. But then when you go back to social media, you can be reinvested by this urge of, I'm not there yet, and it's over there, and I'm not getting it, etc., etc. But I think we're getting to a very interesting point where we're even skipping over sublimation, but where there's another crux of trying to find a solution. What are the ways in which cis males and females should try to find each other in order to work on this toxic dynamic? Because we're talking about trying to embrace pussy or dick in a non-toxic way, and here we come to this very toxic mechanism of where males produce very, very untrue and dangerous opinions about women, and women are forced to internalize their objectification and therefore actually catalyze the problem. What is the change that has to come from both sides in order to fix this, even leaving sublimation there for now?
Oh man, I have no idea, man. I was just going to talk about shit's hard, and you try to sublimate, and then just work on it, and as a guy, you'll get less bitter, hopefully. Okay,
but I think we can actually do this because we talked about this before. I think internalization in general, for example, also internalization of minorities, of the fact that they are, you know, whatever xenophobic connotations you want to put on it, actually worsens the problem because it confirms the problem. So I think that women should have to work on not confirming their objectification in some way, right?
Yeah, that would be good, but don't you feel that the feminist movement, I guess the feminist movement has an issue with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are strands which are very tough on anti-objectification, but the other strands are the more liberal-minded feminists who want to say any kind of female expression should be free and, not externally imposed, right?
Yeah.
As long as you yourself are comfortable with what you're doing, as long as you yourself find that your expression is authentic, then it's okay. And that strand, which is also very strong, that's the one that's where the tension lies, right? They'll just encourage the women to do these kinds of things.
And I think this comes to the idea of the subject as radically free, right? And that every expression in a liberal sense is always legitimate, which completely ignores the actual societal conditions that women are in. Because you might try to empower yourself in this way by being slutty, for example, which is, of course, the epitomal example here. But you forget then that you are constantly being observed by others who interpret this in a certain sense, who might not communicate with you in order for you to be able to correct that conception, reproducing the dynamic constantly. So this idea of female empowerment by, again, affirming your objectification is great. And I think that women should be allowed to do that and should be free to do that. But I think it brushes over the fact that the way in which they are viewed, observed, is constantly still within a societal structure that is predominantly objectifying of females.
Yeah, very good points. I think it's a very tough question because how do you attribute what the causes are and who's responsible? So you have, a burgeoning industry of, what's it called? That streaming website where hot women go on. OnlyFans. Like you have this OnlyFans development where women pretend in front of a massive man, basically. They might not say men, but it's effectively men who give them tons of money. They pretend to be kind of their girlfriend or to kind of give them attention. Basically, vicariously giving them the pussy in a way, right? Virtually giving them. It's hyper real pussy, right? In a way, because this interaction, like the anime that came before it, like the media that placed the need before it, is obviously a highly idealized version of the reality.
And it's not even interaction, of course.
It's not an actual.
It's one way. It's pure speculation and objective. It's pure spectacle.
It's pure. It's pure. That's why it's hyper real, right? The experience of simply seeing them being an object that respond to you. That's more. That is what they then think. This is the interaction, and not actually being with another person who will not agree with everything, who will not just take off her clothes or something, or put her foot in your mouth or whatever. They're basically, well, you can't even say forget, but they've been socialized and habituated in the sense that they don't even know what the real thing is anymore. So really, we're past hyper real. We're just into some other territory.
And here, of course, we're coming to the male problem. The female problem is the internalization of objectification. The male problem is the expectation that the female will just submit.
Yeah, but the problem here is because you said about the women's side that they should be allowed to do that, but at the same time it can be problematic because of what they internalize. On the female side, you're thinking she's just like expressing her subjectivity. She just likes to do this, but at the same time she is complicit in a way. I'm not blaming her, but complicit in a way of creating mass incelification, and that's a very tough problem. And these incels you mentioned, that they want to have some sort of right to pussy, which I don't think will fly. Morally, I definitely don't think it can fly, but probably won't either. And it's probably for the best that it won't fly like that. But it is the expression of a social need that I think we have to face, or at least discuss in some way, because they're doing terrorist attacks on it, man. I think that CIA report, I forgot the name, but listeners can Google it. Just do CIA incel terrorists. I think they commit more murders, like incel-based terrorist organizations commit more murders than Islamic fundamentalists in the U.S.
Wow.
And it's not like they always exaggerate how many Islamic fundamentalists there are, but still, in some way, it's a bigger threat, and it's growing very fast.
And I think what you're getting to the crux of it is that we have a larger social problem that is not even limited to the purely sexual or erotic aspect, but is just the whole wide spectrum of being socially validated, having a fulfilling social life, which seems to be a basic need of human beings.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially because you see that so many incels are, to just regurgitate the metaphor again, in their basements of their moms, constantly on computers, doing absolutely nothing with other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but anyway, let's go to the actual subject that we were trying to talk about. What if you cannot gratify your sexual need by coming into contact with others? What if you have to do it on an individual basis, get away from your sexual frustrations? How do you do that? How do you transfigure your sexuality, Shahrooz? Please tell us.
Yeah, you're putting pressure on me as if I'm some sort of expert or some.
You're my guru, man.
Perverted weirdo. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, one love. So I think, also from my own life, I'm not an incel, but I think every guy, hot take, I think for every guy, more or less every guy, straight guy, I guess, but probably also gay guys, but in a different way.
That's an interesting one too.
Yeah, but we can get into later. For every guy, misogyny is incredibly psychologically intuitive. Misogyny is just, we have to be honest, it's very psychologically intuitive. You got to imagine, like, you got Plato walking around, he's doing philosophy and shit with Thrasymachus or whoever. They're doing, they're talking about the essence of reality and becoming godly and reasoned and getting away from their passions. And what happens? A woman just walks, like just crosses the street, just walks. She's not doing anything, poor woman. She's just walking, just existing. And they go full chimp mode, right? Uh-huh. They go full retard, drooling, and they just want to fuck. So whenever this happened to men, I think, I'm not even joking, and that's the same with the religious thing, they would think, holy shit, this object, because they would not have the wherewithal to think, oh no, this is something internal in me that is projecting that on the woman. No, they objectify the woman, right? That's the easier path. The woman has properties which chimpanzify me. Therefore, the woman is the problem. I want to be elevated philosopher or elevated Christian, or just feel like a divine person who's in control of myself. But the thing there, just by doesn't even do anything, is turning me into fucking chimpanzee, right? So I think that is where. Why it's intuitive to become a misogynist, because
I think so too. Like,
you're trying to sublimate. You're trying
of philosophers. So many philosophers wrote on the woman problem. And demonize women to such a huge extent. I don't quite remember why I started with the misogyny's intuitive thing. Oh, getting to the sublimation. So I think the main thing, because the incels are still in this mindset, right, of the woman is the thing that is causing me all the problems. I think the first step is to take, not responsibility, but make an inward turn and realize that it's your own psychology, your own properties that give you this pathology. It's not the women. They're not related. It's not their fault either. Don't blame them. And also, even if it was, you can't do anything about them. What do you want to do? You can't do shit about them. So it's also not practical, but I don't even think it's their fault. Anyway, you realize that this is your own desire and its structure is wholly part of your own subjectivity, and you have to find a way to take this frustration and just make it more productive. And that's sublimation, right? You elevate the frustration into something more productive. Mm-hmm. And many traditions have this. That's why many ancient traditions, both religions and philosophies, were skeptical towards desires in general, not just sexual desire, any kind of desires, because desires never really get fulfilled. Even if you got all the pussy in the world, it won't fix all your problems, man. I got all these guys out here, they have what you could call Virgano mindsets. They idealize the potential validation that the sexual interactions or the romantic interaction with the women will get them, and they think all their problems will be fixed, right? You even see it in, women also have Virgano mindsets often, in romantic comedies, right? I'm unhappy or in a Disney movie. Then I find true love, and then it seems like every kind of fucking problem in my life is fixed. No, that's not how it works. The problems are yours. They require constant effort. And the first step is to realize that not some other person is not going to fix your problems. Though, yes, it would be good if you got some pussy, because it's really nice. And, we're social animals. We need some of that stuff, but it won't fix all your problems. It's your own problem. Take the frustration. And I think via,
poetic imagination or via regimes of self-control, you can follow philosophies for that, you can make it into something more productive. Take the frustration and turn it into productive energy. And that's what's called sublimation, sexual transmutation. Sexual transmutation sounds way more funny. That's why I say that one.
Yeah, you could use anything like transfiguration, transmutation.
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
And this was a big deal back in the day, even now, but, it doesn't matter. They have traditions in Catholicism, in Islam, in Greek philosophy or especially in Hinduism and Buddhism, of basically taking the suffering and trying to spiritualize it. You grab the suffering, and instead of, you don't repress it. You don't say, "Oh, it's so bad that I turn into a chimp," or even look at a woman. The women are not even relevant.
I think that's more of what we do now.
What?
Repress. And I also think that we're right now less skeptical of desire.
We're totally not skeptical.
Desire more, and this even creates more frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, just the existence of the dating app promising you that the frustrations you feel right now will be resolved when you use this. I think in general bad for the dynamics that we are creating. And I think this more ancient skepticalness of desires produces more healthy human beings, because they actually tell them that sublimation and being skeptical is important. And I think there's less just in general transfiguration going on right now. So I think it's really great that you brought it up.
Yeah, I think good points. I think we have zero skepticism of desires. In fact, we seem to think that we find our happiness within desires, which is the stupidest thing ever, because desires are not made to be fulfilled. There's no point at which you think, I got all the pussy I needed and now it's done. It's a constant, men in the 50s, they're still struggling with pussy. You're still struggling with food. You're still struggling with drugs. You're still struggling with sleep, with all kinds of things. So the first step is to realize that the desires, and not that the ancients figured it out, they would sometimes go too far, but at least get the caveat that you have to be both skeptical towards them, and you have to, in some, either send them into pathways where they are more productive, or just be in control of them to some degree. And to a lesser degree, you should have fun with them, of course. And I think that's sorely lacking. With these incels, they just keep externalizing their problem, right? It's the women, I need to get them, and they're raised in this way too with all the stupid anime and movies. They all idealize the woman like a vagina. They put way too much emphasis on the capability of the desire to fulfill their whole.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because at the same time, they are very much a source of hate. So
because it can't happen.
It's so contradictory, and this is something that I used to experience. So when I was more of an incel, when I was younger, where on the one hand I really hated women and was angry with them, even if they were nice to me, and on the other hand I saw them as the absolute solution to all my problems, because I was very whenever I was unhappy back then, I just blamed it on the fact that I didn't have a relationship, or just in general on the fact that women didn't like me, which wasn't even true. I just thought that women didn't like me.
Yeah. But even then in the phrasing, like you say, women didn't like me. Most men, they probably don't dislike you, but they're indifferent to you, right? That's just the norm. Why would you think that they would be anything other than indifferent towards you, because they don't know you? And the vast majority of women are probably also indifferent towards you.
Exactly.
And that's and you should be fine with that. That's just the normal state of affairs. Why would they be anything other than indifferent towards you? And
it seems to be the same mechanism where you take things personal.
Yeah, because you have this expectation.
Human beings have the tendency to take things personal and to think that a large part of the world revolves around them. That's not to say that they're narcissistic, but it seems to be a bit of a basic mode of experiencing and projecting onto the world, and realizing that both men and women are very indifferent to you in general, because they have no reason to, really regard you and consider you constantly, because they're constantly distracted by other stuff and shit, is a very good way of then maybe working towards sublimation, where you say, okay, a majority of the people is indifferent to me, let's try to see what I can find inwardly, and then invest my frustrated sexual energies into other subjects, other disciplines to gratify myself.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. I think, there's no one formula, but, and they already do it in a way, right? They come together and formulate these theories. So instead of sublimating, they are finding like a kind of ideological painkiller for their problem by making theories that explain why they're not getting it and why it's okay that they're not getting it. Whereas what they should be doing is, it doesn't really matter if I get it or not. I have this desire, and the best thing I can do is take it and turn it into something more productive. And there are many ways to do this. Like, people meditate. You can listen to some music. Like, I do that a lot. I'll be like thirsting for my ex or something. And then, it hurts, right? Like, I'm suffering. And then I put on some music. And then I'm like, yeah, fuck it, man. I'm just suffering hard. It's cool. And then when you feel like you're getting at it, when you just convince yourself you're enjoying the suffering in a genuine way, you're like, when you're going down the slope of suckiness, then you try to just like revert the slope and go back up and be like, fuck it, man, doesn't really matter. I feel okay anyway. The weather is good. And, the best pussy out there is nature, Mother Nature. Fuck it. Just screw it. And the funny thing is, if you think in these terms genuinely, you'll probably get more pussy anyway, right?
Yeah, that's
because you'll be better off. But that should never be your reason to do it. But you'll probably get more anyway.
Okay, I want to discuss something with you before we go on. Is this a case of sublimation or just a case of affirmation of suffering? But because I feel like in the case of sublimation or transfiguration, you're trying to move away from the suffering by investing that same energy into something else. Mm-hmm. But now it seems like you're saying that you're actually enjoying the suffering, which makes it so that you affirm the same state instead of transfiguring the state into something else.
Yeah, that's a astute point. I think in this case, I was probably thinking, first you do affirmation, and via the affirmation you do sublimation.
You go into sublimation.
Right, that's when the affirmation is when at the bottom of the slope you're like, this is okay. And then you're like, oh, but I can, since it's okay, maybe I can do something with it. So, I'm going to move up with music, or maybe you're watching a good movie or going out with friends. I think you can work out, you can do all sorts of things to take a feeling, a frustration, and make it productive. Like, I'm so frustrated, I got too much energy, I got excess energy. Let me try, it's very hard though, to turn it into working out or work or, I don't know, a hobby or whatever. I think that's better. But I think the most important first step is just to keep making an inward turn. Just it's about you. It's not about the women, don't blame them. They don't owe you anything. And be mindful of the egocentrism. They're also their own being with their own subjectivity. They're just existing. It's not their problem that you're so fucking frustrated. What are they supposed to do?
And that's the annoyance for them, right? Just existing.
Just existing for them
is for them.
No, it's for us, not for them.
For both. No, also for them.
We make it a problem for them.
Yeah, we make it a problem for them.
But we find their existence problematic, and then we externalize it towards them, and then make it a problem, right? We tell them, they're sluts if they fuck around, or they're not supposed to enjoy,
go tell a lesbian,
or go tell a lesbian. They're BJ machines, whatever. We make it a. Any human makes their own existence a problem for themselves to a large degree, but I think men throw an additional layer. That is the female experience, right?
Especially also because females never wrote on the man problem. Like the only time they do that is because they're actually then because men write books on the female problem.
Yeah, well, don't they write it now? The man problem. They've made it a problem now, right? Masculinity has become a problem.
Yeah, of course, but that is a feminist response to the fact that men just from the bottom line find females problematic.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
Females not from the beginning right on the man problem because our existence is not a problem for them.
No,
it becomes a problem for them because their existence is a problem for us.
Exactly, but don't you think we've reached a stage where the discourse also considers masculinity itself conceptually a problem?
Yes,
some seem to think that masculinity is almost equivalent to toxic masculinity. Like being really masculine, whatever that means, is by itself a kind of issue, and even a pathology for the men themselves, which is kind of a very deep, almost insidious, I would say, both manipulation and denial of the other.
Yeah, I think I've experienced this as well, where I, by proxy, I'm ashamed of being a man when I see other males do things that I find very sexist or misogynist. Yes.
Yeah,
but then what becomes interesting, of course, is how can males re-embrace their masculinity without maybe reaffirming or internalizing the toxicity, but instead becoming this good male that is not sexist, not misogynist, but still stereotypically male.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like we should completely move away from the framework of masculinity, which is something you were alluding to when you talked about the male problem becoming a problem in general.
Yeah, but that's how we get to embracing pussy in a non-toxic way, right? Because there are problematic aspects of masculinity, especially having this many expectations of women.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the desire for pussy is not necessarily a harmful one. Even the very chimpanzee-like superficial way we go about it, I don't think it's harmful at all. It's just something men do. But it is harmful when they make women responsible for it or the target of it. I think, again, by sublimating it, finding peace with it, and also laughing about it a lot. Like, you turn into a chimp, you should just be like, yeah, whatever, man, we're chimps, whatever. We can be philosophers and chimps. We don't have to be. That's what
happens.
And if you're bored if you're a philosopher god all the time, right? It's fun to have being chimps sometimes. Via that route, I think we can try to embrace pussy for what it is, because pussy is a beautiful thing. Like, we all want, everybody wants pussy, and dick is a beautiful thing too, right?
Definitely.
I mean, I'm not into dick, but it's probably, they want it too, right? Or sometimes men want dick. But basically, the core of it is a deep need for validation. You both want to be naked, you both want to be completely vulnerable and pathetic, but be okay with that. Like, the other's like, honey, it's okay, you're pathetic, but I love you for it. You can be pathetic with me. Let's have sex now. Let's make love, right?
I think
that would be the good way to embrace pussy. And I think as men, you should just try to veer towards that view of what pussy is for you. You can, one, validate somebody else. That's the beautiful thing of pussy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the validating of somebody else, validate yourself. But primarily the frustration, that's your own thing, and it's your own project. If you can sublimate it even to a slight degree, man, that's some warrior shit right there. That's what life is about, right?
Yeah, of course it is beautiful to conceive of it as your own project.
Uh-huh.
And people should always try to take responsibility, even if we regard the whole concept of responsibility as a myth. But I do think that conceiving of it in that way has the risk of brushing over the extreme dependence of it on the current societal structure.
Oh yeah, that's the bigger problem. I don't have an answer on that.
That's the reason in general why we're talking about incels right now. Society produced incels. And of course, your own sublimation is important. And if you're empowered to do that, that's cool. But we have to keep addressing the system, using quotation marks right now.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have an answer to that one. That's so tough. The societal problem.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like individual responsibility and structure of a society in general, that back and forth with this problem, I think will always remain. So I would say advice in general, if you're able to try out Transfiguration, please do so. But if you also notice that it's a problem of you not having become socially adapted, please try to work on that. Like, first get your social skills there, and when they're there, then go for sublimation or something like that. If we should go into really concrete advice, I don't know.
Probably try to make friends.
Guys,
Yeah. I mean, probably try to make friends. Try to be more comfortable with yourself. And probably, I would say, that's the most easy way for men, at least, to sublimate pussy drive. Use it to just improve yourself. Mm-hmm. In a way, it's a good thing, right? Because imagine if pussy was not scarce, I'd be scared. Because I'd just be a hobo, dirty ass, stanky motherfucker in my room, doing shit. About 80% of my motivation for becoming a decent person is on some obscure reptilian level to get pussy.
Yeah, and I've heard this from so many males.
Right? So it's good.
An old friend of mine once admitted to me that the only reason he did all of this while pointing towards his great empire of stuff and skills and things he did was for females, which I think is very problematic. But I think that if you're a more skilled person in general, you're more able to transfigure. I feel like sublimation, transfiguration requires a certain threshold of skill, because it also requires for you to have other opportunities to put your energy into.
Yeah.
If you have very little interests, then you have no place for your drives to go. If you have very little skills, you have more opportunities for your drives to be frustrated. So sublimation, transfiguration, in some kind of way, and I don't want to make it over moralistic, feels a bit elitist. Feels like it's meant for an elite that is able to actually do this.
Yeah, I mean, in the Freudian sense, it's supposed to take. You're supposed to take your pathologies or your oppressions and turn them into socially productive things. So he literally says you have to shape them into something
and socially
that's beneficial.
acceptable, of course.
Yeah, but also productive. Like he would, turn them into good family relations, work, good stuff like that. But I think it can just be something simple. Like again, you go outside, listen to music, and just take that frustration and try to turn it into something beautiful. Try to be poetic with it. That would already help you a lot, and you don't have to actually turn it into something that makes you money or gains you a skill. But on the thing that it's problematic, that 80% of the stuff we do is for pussy. Yes and no, but I mean, everybody does stuff for some reason. We're social animals. People always say you do stuff for yourself, but that doesn't make sense because that's not how we work.
I think then you get into this stupid discussion of, you do things for others, but actually you just do that for yourself.
Yeah.
That's also that's almost a transfiguration of the ego drive into an other drive or something.
Yeah, but I think if you just make pussy more abstract and just see it as the general inclination towards a wide-ranging validation, usually relegated to females, then you can I would just play with it. Like just play with the notion, play with your own incelness, and pertaining to the broader societal issue. That one is tough. I think we still need to figure out what's the female equivalent of this. Because if so many guys are not getting pussy, in the long term, some women must be suffering from it in their own way. I don't know. It's such 40% of the population is just not having anything romantically going on. There must be a scarcity of men, right? So the women must be having something going on in their head. I don't know what it is.
Any woman listening, please tell us. We'll believe in contact.
The 0.5 women listening, please.
Great. Yes. We want to know this. Cool. I really need to pee.